Thank you for joining this episode of our webinar series on best practices in eDiscovery. Today's session is focused on small firm eDiscovery, and we've got a lot of information to cover today, so I'll quickly move through the introduction. My name is Jeff Fugit. I'm Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Lexby, and I'll be the moderator for today's event. Our webinars take place monthly and cover a variety of relevant eDiscovery topics, trends, best practices, as well as strategies. Space is limited to the capacity of our webinar platform, and these events have been popular, so I recommend registering promptly for the sessions that are of interest to you. If you have any technical issues or questions, please email us at webinars@lexby.com and we'll take care of those right away. Our webinars are available online at lexby.com for viewing via streaming video or downloadable as a MP3 podcast, as well as a PDF presentation. You'll find this webinar and a complete listing of other webinars on lexby.com. To be notified of future live and on-demand events, please email us at webinars@lexby.com or follow us on LinkedIn. A little bit about Lexby. We're based in Austin, Texas, and we provide a highly affordable cloud-based eDiscovery platform as well as services. We really specialize in equipping the boutique firm with an eDiscovery solution that gives you full control over the eDiscovery process, full DIY capabilities, and incredibly fast performance. We're the industry's most affordable and full-featured DIY eDiscovery platform. We're the industry's fastest eDiscovery processing and document review platform. We deliver the industry's fastest return on investment per a report that was done by G2 Crowd last year. And we have a team of experienced eDiscovery specialists and expert consultants who are all ACED certified and are standing by to assist on a moment's notice if you need it. If you'd like a demonstration of our platform, simply email us at sales@lexby.com and we'll get that scheduled. Joining us today is Brett Burney. Brett is the founder and principal at Burney Consultants, where he provides independent and expert consulting services to corporate executives and legal professionals. He focuses on legal tech and, in particular, eDiscovery. Brett is also a highly sought after trainer and presenter for lawyers who seek to integrate Macs and iPads into their practice. Brett is an esteemed author and sought after speaker on legal technology topics. He's been a featured speaker at numerous legal technology conferences and served as the chair of the ABA Tech Show. Brett speaks regularly for local and state bar associations nationwide and is routinely quoted in industry interviews for TechnoLawyer, Legal Tech News, ABA Journal, and many more. Prior to founding his consultancy, Brett supported lawyers at the law firm of Thompson Hine, where he worked with litigation teams in building electronic document databases, counseling on eDiscovery issues, and managing the technical responsibilities of presenting evidence at trial. And to set the stage for our presenter today, Brett Burney, I'm going to ask a couple of polling questions. The first is, do you currently utilize eDiscovery in your firm? Yes, no, what is eDiscovery? And our next polling question is, what percentage of your matters do you consider document intensive? Before I turn it over to Brett, I do want to cover a few things in terms of issues and challenges that small firms have been facing. So recently, we've seen coverage of some of the challenges that small firms are facing with eDiscovery. Just this month, we've seen this article come out in Above the Law, where small firms keep ignoring eDiscovery to their peril. The issue with this is there's a tremendous opportunity for small firms to level the playing field with technology, and it's all about the cloud. And I know we're going to go into this in more detail, but small firms have a real opportunity to compete at a high level and to perform at a high level in terms of eDiscovery. And with the resources that they have at their fingertips, with virtually any web-enabled or web-connected device, they can really compete and do well. So I think we're going to take this issue of the small firms that keep ignoring eDiscovery to their peril. And I think we're going to open your eyes and help you understand how you can address this issue effectively. So in the recent Thomson Reuters report, the 2019 State of U.S. Small Firms, here you see that 19% of the firms that were surveyed, only 19% are utilizing eDiscovery and eDiscovery platforms in their practice. Now, it gets a little bit better with case management, but still that's a huge deficiency, with only 55% of firms surveyed using case management technology in their practice. So, Brett, I'll turn it over to you, but what do you think about these particular issues that small firms are facing?
Well, Jeff, that's exactly what I actually see from so many of the law firms that I work with. And I keep trying to figure out whether that with small firms, it's just a matter of the fact that they don't feel that eDiscovery is something that they should be interested in. Maybe they feel like that they're not big enough, or they don't have the big enough matters, which is truly unfortunate, because you'll see in just a moment I'm going to go through and just try to explain or give some context into the fact that it's really unfortunate that they are thinking that way. Even if we go to sort of the level or the word that a lot of people don't like to use all the time, but it's competency, right? The model rules of professional conduct and many of the state rules talk about a competent lawyer. What does it mean to be competent? And many times we're talking about that from the context of a substantive understanding, right, of the law. In other words, if you regularly do family law, but somebody comes and wants you to handle a construction litigation matter, can you do that? And the answer is yes, as long as you become competent in the law surrounding construction law, right? And in the same way, and a few years ago in 2012, the ABA added the phrase to the model rules of professional conduct in the competency area. This is Rule 1.1, that you also must have a competency level in technology, and the more specifically the benefits and risks associated with the technology that you use. Now that goes for like using your mobile phone, right? That you should have a passcode on it, but it also has implications for things like eDiscovery, understanding or having a competent level of understanding with the technology involved with eDiscovery. So that's why I'm thrilled to be with you today to talk about this a little bit more from the context of it really doesn't matter how small or large of a firm that you work in. We're all doing eDiscovery. So thanks for the introduction, by the way. And it's great to be here. I also wanted to point out what's on the screen here is part of one of the things that I just authored with a partner, Chelsea Lambert here, about a year ago, was the first ever eDiscovery Buyer's Guide, where if you can look at the little green front cover there, it talks about the fact that we specifically targeted this buyer's guide to small firms, solo practitioners, because we just found that there was a lack of resources available for those folks, unfortunately, that wanted to know what are some of the tools that are available out there for them to successfully go through eDiscovery projects. And in fact, we were thrilled to have Lexby as one of the companies involved in this eDiscovery Buyer's Guide. Here's the review that we have posted in the guide, which, by the way, is completely free to download. Chelsea and I just knew that we wanted to make this resource approachable and available to as many folks as possible. And so you can all go to eDiscoveryBuyersGuide.com and download a free copy of this. We're getting ready actually to release the 2019 version of this. Lexby is going to be a part of that yet again, which is great. We're going to have a little video reviews in there as well. So eDiscoveryBuyersGuide.com is the place to go to get a little bit more information about it. But let's get back to this theme, Jeff, that you did such a great job of introducing. I'm thrilled to see more and more stories about this, with just sort of heightening the awareness level, especially in solo practitioners and small firms, that yes, you do need to be involved with eDiscovery. It's not just for the big law firms. I'm constantly going into firms, Jeff, that are small, maybe 10 attorneys or less, and they just tell me, well, we don't do eDiscovery, right? That's for the lawyers in the big, tall buildings, and we don't do that. Like, our matters aren't that big. And I look at them and I say, well, what do you practice then? And they may tell me something like, well, it's domestic issues, right? And I said, and I look at them and say, well, where is the information that you need to gather for your matters, right? Is it paper? Is it handwritten notes? Well, in some cases, maybe it is. But more and more today, it doesn't matter if you're doing real estate, construction law, domestic issues, criminal issues, all the information that is relevant, all the evidence is electronic. Now, you may choose to print something out, right? To print an email message or print out a Word document, but the original file is electronic. And in fact, more and more today, I'm getting pulled in on things like domestic issues, for example, because all the information that's exchanged between the spouses or the evidence against one spouse or the other, whatever the case may be, is all electronic. It's text messages. It is social media posts. It's the history of where they went on their web browser, for example. It's tracking finances in an Excel spreadsheet or some other kind of an online application. Every law firm today is dealing with electronically stored information. You may not call it eDiscovery, but I guarantee you're dealing with eDiscovery. Even if you have paper, today I tell people that piece of paper wasn't created by hand. That piece of paper you're holding in your hand was printed from a computer, right? From a Word document or something along those lines.
You make an excellent point there. And the thing that I wanted to call out even more is, there's massive, massive growth in electronically stored information. I think everybody understands that, knows that. But there's also massive fragmentation of the sources of ESI. Like, we're a partner with Amazon Web Services, and that's where Lexby resides. When I'm talking to our contacts at Amazon, they're talking about the subpoenas that they're getting for AI-based, artificial intelligence-based subpoenas where Alexa and an Amazon device has actually captured audio files.
Right.
So it's amazing, and there's massive proliferation of this. And so I think if you're not considering eDiscovery for your small practice, you're really in a challenged state.
Yeah. Well, and I would even say it this way. It's not even a question in my mind about whether you're ignoring eDiscovery. You are dealing with eDiscovery today and electronically stored information. Where the choice comes is whether or not you choose to accept that or embrace that or to learn about that, right? Jeff, you and I hear this all the time from any law firms we deal with, any lawyers. I'm not really tech savvy, right? Or they'll say, I'm not really computer literate, so I don't deal with all that kind of stuff. And I understand that. I deal with folks from all varieties of ages and backgrounds, and I understand where they're coming from on that. But the point that we're getting to, even with the ABA model rules, and today with your great points about, it's not just the kinds of information, but it's how many different varieties of it. Like you said, the Internet of Things, Alexa, and gathering information that is so important today. You may choose to ignore it, but it's there. You are dealing with it in some form or fashion already, which I think brings to this. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm probably going to date myself, but there was a point in time when litigators really didn't consider email as an important source of evidence or a potential source of evidence. And I think we're seeing a little bit of a tipping point from email to some of these other sources. And I think you're exactly spot on.
That's a great point. I remember those days, Jeff. I'm with you. They would just say, well, email, that's not really, that's not mail. That's not official information. And today, that is the primary source of potentially relevant information, right? You would be ridiculed if you chose to ignore email today. That's laughable, right? But I think you're exactly right. We're coming up on that same area, certainly with social media. I used to say, it's amazing what people will say in an email message, right? Something they would never say to a person face to face. They would never pick up the phone and call them, but yet, ironically, they would put it down in a textual format that's probably never going to get deleted. Yep. But not only is it amazing what people say in an email, but today, social media, oh my goodness. I like to think of it as job security, really, because it's amazing what people will say in social media posts today. And if you choose to ignore that as a source of VSI, of potentially relevant information, then you are completely ignoring a fundamental component of what you should be going after these days.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think there's, different custodian behavior by ESI channel or ESI source. And we see this too in the collaboration platforms that are inside enterprises like Slack,
Yes.
Google Hangouts. Employees are less judicious about, how they're communicating. They're more casual and
Right.
maybe a bit cavalier in how they communicate. So those are also really strong sources of evidence for a lot of the matters that our clients are focused on.
Now, that story you showed from Above the Law is a great story just a few days ago. And it was, I think of the headline as sort of in the negative, right? Small law firms choose to ignore eDiscovery at their own peril. I try to twist it around to make it into a little bit of a positive. In other words, we're saying the same thing here, but it's an amazing opportunity, just like you said, Jeff, for mid-sized and small firms to actually differentiate themselves in the sense that they are knowledgeable about this, right? They can go to their clients now, even larger clients, frankly, large corporate clients, and say, we have a knowledge base about this. We have an understanding about this, and we have the capabilities, the tools, like the cloud-based components of Lexby or some of the other cloud-based tools now that you wouldn't even imagine of being able to have access to as a smaller mid-sized firm. And being able to have access to those tools and access to the knowledge today, the education on the eDiscovery side, really, again, can keep you just even more competitive. It's almost a differentiator still even today, even though eDiscovery has been around for many, many years. Anyway, I try to put that in a positive light because it is something that can truly and absolutely help firms kind of, even climb up a couple of notches and really just differentiate themselves that way. But let's get down to some of the practical aspects. So in the past, this is what we look at when we think of discovery, right? Not even putting the E in front of it yet, but discovery, right? Inside of litigation. In the past, we were looking at piles of paper. And in today, even still, we're looking at piles of paper. I go into many, many law offices where I could peek through the door, an open door of one of the offices of a lawyer, and I still see stacks and stacks of paper around. And I understand that there's a comfort level that goes with that. But when we come to the discovery component, here are the two questions that I ask all the time when I'm talking with lawyers. If you've got stacks of paper, how do you organize this information between what's relevant, or what's responsive, and what's not? And then, of course, how do you search it? Well, the first question I know the answer to many times. How do you organize this? Because I see this all the time. If they got a pile of paper, they need to find what's relevant or what's responsive. So they pick up the first page, right? They read it, and they determine, is it responsive? If yes, they put it over in a responsive pile. If not, they put it into a non-responsive pile over on the other side, right? If it's privileged, you got another pile. If it's relevant to a specific witness, for example, you got another pile. So that's how I see most people organizing this when you have paper. But how do you search it? Now, many people tell me, well, I only have a couple of hundred documents in this case. I've got it all right up here in my head. It's fine. I don't need to worry about it. But then something happens at a deposition or a hearing, and they need to find a phrase or, something that was referenced inside this, that's something that a witness said. Well, how do you go about going in and searching all of that information? Well, the answer is you can't, right? Now, good on you if you've got a photographic memory and you can remember all that. But most people don't, and that's where we start, running into some of the issues. Here's a great quote I like to throw up from Judge Shinlin. This was a few years ago at the Legal Tech Conference in New York, and actually all four of those folks at the table are judges, Judge Shinlin being on the far left there when you're looking at it here, and Judge Peck and Judge Fasciola, which we all know sort of as the eDiscovery rock stars. There's judges that have had opinions on this. And this was a panel moderated by Craig Ball, who's standing up there at the podium. And he had this slide that you can see at the very top row there, where he is showing the native versions of these digital electronic files, right? An Excel file, a Word file, an Outlook email message, a PowerPoint file. And those native electronic files are the original file. They are fully searchable and they're fully usable in the sense that you can find the information and you can, for example, with a PowerPoint file, it's meant to be shown inside Microsoft PowerPoint. Now, when you convert that into a different context, or somebody prints it into a PDF, or they print it into a paper document, then you are converting that. Now, on the slide, they talk about a TIFF image conversion, but this could also be a PDF, or it could be a simply a printed version on a piece of paper. And you can see that Judge Shinlin here talks about just that the native files are the ways that documents are kept in the ordinary course of business, right? If you are not getting the native electronic files, then you are getting a downgrade of the original document. And in fact, I show this slide quite often and just kind of help people get their heads wrapped around, what does this mean? If you do not get the electronic file, and instead you're getting a piece of paper or you're getting a PDF, then first of all, you're not even getting what you're supposed to get according to the rules, right? This is the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure and many of the state rules that have basically taken the exact same language from the federal rules. They say you can get access to the information in the way that it's kept in the ordinary course of business, right? So how are companies keeping their Word documents and Excel spreadsheets and their email? Are they printing everything and keeping it in paper? No, they're keeping it in electronic format. And that's what you are due. You also will get all of the metadata when you get the electronic file from either your client or the other side. The metadata that includes the author, the recipient, the send date, the file type. This is absolutely critical when you are looking at email messages, for example. You want to know the from and the to and the CC and the BCC and the subject line and whether or not it was opened and whether it belonged to a specific conversation, for example. And with all of that information, which platforms like Lexi will do for you, you can then sort all of that. You can filter all of that. You can easily put all of the emails in a chronological order, right, by a certain date. And you can't do that if you don't have the original electronic file. Now, I've already hit upon this, the fact that they're fully searchable. Well, people tell me, well, I've got this piece of paper, I'm going to scan it in as a PDF and we're going to OCR it, or text recognize the text on it. And that's fine, except that OCR is never 100% accurate. There's always going to be a chance where, my favorite example is a lowercase l in like Times New Roman, right? We as humans can read a lowercase l if it's typed in Times New Roman, but the computer sometimes will think, well, that looks like a numeral 1, right? And so that could completely throw off any kind of a search inside for different words. And then I use this term file fidelity, which is really just referring back again to the original electronic file. One of the cases from several years ago out of the federal courts in Kansas, it was Williams v. Sprint, right? And Sprint had to produce several Excel spreadsheets to the plaintiff. And they produced those Excel spreadsheets as PDF files. Now, for the most part, that's okay, although, that's quite a nightmare to actually print out an Excel spreadsheet. But the issue, the questions in this case had to do with the formula that Sprint was using inside the cell of a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, right? It wasn't the value of the cell, it was the formula inside the cell. Well, when you take an Excel spreadsheet and you convert it into a PDF file, what shows up in that cell? The only thing that shows up is the value. It doesn't show the formula. So because they created it or produced it in PDF, the judge ordered them to go back and reproduce those Excel spreadsheets in their native formats. So that's what I mean when I talk about file fidelity, is that you're getting more of the information that you should be getting already because they're simply stayed in electronic format.
So Brett, that's such a great point that you make there. And I think it often goes overlooked. There are a bunch of use cases very similar to your Sprint example, where PowerPoint presentations and the speaker notes may or may not be available in the production. So oftentimes you'll find gold in the speaker notes. If you see revisions in documents, in Word documents, you don't always get those in a PDF form, depending upon how that document is produced. So having that that fidelity, that file fidelity is really critical to make sure you're getting access to all the evidence.
Well, I know that you guys at Lexby think that all of that is very important, Jeff, because I'll just go back. There's not too many platforms that do what you do. I believe you call it the Uber Index, which I think is just a fantastic name. But there's not too many platforms that will pull out some of that hidden type of information, right? Like you said, PowerPoint speaker notes. More than one time, Jeff, that has absolutely come up in some of the cases that I work on, because it's not just the slide itself, the picture or the color, which sometimes is even a little bit of a mess when you convert that into PDF. But it's those speaker notes that somebody just happened to put in, a quirky little phrase or some kind of a comment about this, or oh man, this should really get the audience going, or we're not going to tell them about this secret over here. I mean, something crazy like that you would just think would be ridiculous people put in, but they do. And if you don't have the original PowerPoint file, you're not going to get that information. And folks, there's a few platforms like Lexby that will look for that kind of hidden type of information and be able to put that into the platform so that you can search that as well. Now, along those lines, a last quick little practical tip is, we've already talked about email. We talked about the fact that email today is the primary source of potentially relevant information. It has been for many years, save for the fact that, once lawyers woke up and understood, it's like, wow, email is pretty important. People are really passing information. And by the way, it's not just the communication aspect of email today. Jeff, you guys see this as well. It's not just the communication of the actual message. In fact, we find in most of the cases that I deal with, the vast majority of loose files, right? Like Word documents, PDF files, PowerPoint files, they're not found in some corner of a network share drive or anything. They're found as attachments to email. So I look at email as not just the communication, but also the rich source of some of the most relevant individual documents or files that you may need to review as well, because they're all part of the attachments. So the main way that we deal with email today in its contextual part, and I'm not going to get too geeky, I promise, but this, I would say, is absolutely one of the most important things you should understand, and maybe a great takeaway from today, is if we know that email is so important, you need to know about the file formats to deal with email. And the most prevalent that we deal with today is the PST file. I think originally it stood for portable storage table or something like that, but it doesn't matter anymore what it really stands for. The main thing that you need to know is the PST file is the file format that comes out of Microsoft Outlook or Microsoft Exchange. Microsoft Exchange being the Microsoft email server version, which the vast majority of people use today, certainly any corporation or organization you go with today. And if they're not using an Exchange server today, they're using Microsoft Office 365, which is a subscription level for all their software, but then their email is hosted in an Exchange server as well. The point is, the PST file has become basically the de facto file format for transporting email messages. A PST file can come out of Microsoft Outlook. So it could be as simple as, you can tell a client, go to your Outlook, you want to export all of these emails from a single folder, just go to File and do an export, and it will create it as a PST file. Number one thing about PST file is that it can hold one email message, or it can hold 10 million email messages. A single PST file can hold hundreds and hundreds of thousands of email messages, or it can hold 10, whatever is going to be important for your case. Second thing to know about a PST file is that it preserves the information inside that file. That's extremely important. Just like we were talking about some of the electronic information. If you have a client that has an email that's relevant, many times I see, unfortunately, that client will simply just forward that email to you as the lawyer. Now, what happens if you have to produce that email now? Because I run into this all the time, Jeff. The lawyer will say, well, I've got the email right here. I'm just going to print it out, right? Well, what happens when you print an email from your Microsoft Outlook? Whose name is at the top of that email message? Is it the client name? No, it's your name. your name, you are now, you have your fingerprints all over this email message now, as it were, right? This is evidence that's been forwarded to you because that's an easy way for the client maybe to get it to you. But then you print it out or you produce it and your name is at the top. I worked with one law firm that they did this and used Outlook to review their PST files. And they called me because the name of the attorney kept printing at the top. And they were proud because they found one way to avoid this is they just made that print font like 1 point so that it made it so tiny that you couldn't even really read it. But that's not a good way to go about this, right? Thankfully, I've worked with them and they're much, much better off now in how they do this. But if a client sends you a PST file, do not use Microsoft Outlook to review that PST file. Many law firms think, well, if Microsoft Outlook was used to create this PST file, perhaps then I can use Microsoft Outlook to review this PST file. But there are a couple of issues that come with it. Number one, I've already alluded to, you are then commingling electronic evidence with your own work product, right? Those are live email messages if you pull it up within Microsoft Outlook. You have limited search functions. I know that Microsoft Outlook has the ability to search through your messages, but it's nothing like what you're going to find in something like Lexby, for example. And then how do you tag the messages that you find that are relevant or not relevant? Well, most lawyers tell me, I just create another folder in my Outlook that says relevant or responsive and non-responsive, right? And then they just copy them in there. Well, again, you are then modifying the original file. You're potentially changing up the metadata of those messages. In some cases, that may not make much of a difference. But in other cases, that can make a huge difference because if you've got somebody like me or Jeff on the other side, we are absolutely going to be asking you questions about, well, wait a minute, how did you preserve this information? Well, you put it in your own Outlook. That means that you made some changes. So what is the solution here? Today, as Jeff alluded to, instead of using these tools or fretting about how you can successfully get through a document review, today, everybody has access to a cloud-based document review platform, such as Lexi, and there's several others out there. You can go to the eDiscovery Buyer's Guide and explore them. There's a few points quickly I want to make, and Jeff, you jump in if you want to add anything on here. Cloud-based document review tools, one of the first things that I find many lawyers appreciate about them is the fact that they can handle most of the work by themselves, right? DIY. I find so many small law firms, mid-sized law firms, you've got a lot of balls in the air that you're juggling between keeping clients happy, whether with the work that you're doing, but certainly with the cost and the resources. You've got internal resources at your firm, whether it's a paralegal or an assistant, and all the things that they're having to do all the time. You've got a lot of things that you have to work through. So having more control over the case and your discovery project from a DIY perspective can be very helpful. What's great about these cloud-based servers, first of all, you don't have to buy a server on these cloud-based systems. You don't have to buy a server. You don't have to outlay any immense expense to bring in new hardware into your firm. Similarly, you don't have to buy any software. You don't have to go out and have a big outlay of cash for a software platform. And then, of course, there's annual maintenance fees and all the everything else that's involved with that. You don't have to go out and hire anyone. I mean, you could retain a consultant like myself if you wanted to, but you don't have to go and hire a full-time litigation support person because most of these platforms allow you to work within the context of the resources you already have in your firm. And what's great also is that you can jump right in and you can start using it within probably just even a few minutes of logging in. But here's a few things quickly from the DIY perspective I like to make sure I remind my clients about. You have to still be aware, maintain control of your matter. I find many attorneys, they say, well, okay, we're gonna go with Lexby, and then you handle it. And then I've got many other things I have to think about and consider. And I get that. I do. I understand that. However, today, eDiscovery is not some kind of a side hustle that's happening in your firm. eDiscovery today is an actual real component that should be juggled in with all of the other components of your legal strategy, whether it's early case assessment, how much data that you're having to review is an incredibly important part that should be factored in to your counsel for your client on whether this even makes sense to go forward, right? If it's going to cost you 3 times as much to collect all the information and review it than what the case is actually worth, well, that's an important component to think of. So I tell attorneys, this is not something that you should just pass off to a legal assistant or a paralegal and just forget about it from that point on. You need to at least have a level of competency about the eDiscovery and the components going on there. And then, of course, Brett, yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Brett, I think you're making excellent points. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. Certainly the boutique and the small firm, they want to be lean and mean, and they want to maintain control. And these cloud-based solutions like Lexby enable them to do that. They don't have to make big infrastructure investments. They don't have to hire IT support. They don't have to hire a team of litigation support professionals. They can manage that in-house. And these platforms make it very, very efficient to work through a review and a workflow that enables them to manage and handle document-intensive cases in-house with limited staff. And really critical to the point that you were just making, it is absolutely imperative that the attorney maintains some level of knowledge and starts to improve their level of knowledge around eDiscovery, because these matters and the amount of documents in these matters is growing exponentially.
Right, absolutely. And along those lines goes to my second bullet point there. Take full advantage of any free training, whether it's live webinars like this, for example, or live training sessions from the companies, or most of these companies like Lexby have a fantastic help center that you can go in and a series of videos, for example, that you can watch. I see this all the time, Jeff, that an attorney or a firm will say, okay, well, we're gonna use Lexby. This is great, done. We've got it, right? We've made our decision. But that it doesn't stop there. Going along those lines of just being aware. I'm not saying that every attorney has to know every single component of creating a production set, right? Obviously, that's what you have folks like myself as a consultant, or you have a paralegal that can go in and do the actual hands-on. But an attorney certainly needs to know, do you want a production in native files? Do you want a production of load files? What does that mean? You should have a level of competency on that. And places like Lexby, vendors like Lexby, provide all kinds of fantastic training that you should take an hour once a week, or a couple of hours, or maybe 5 hours in that first week when you are just gearing up onto a platform like Lexby, that you need to become knowledgeable. Again, the attorneys aren't going to be doing the hands-on component, although in small firms a lot of them are, but you still need to have an understanding of the capabilities of these systems so that you can better direct the people that you're delegating some of this work to, and B, that you can better discuss the capabilities of these systems with opposing counsel, for example, or even with the court if necessary. And then tailing onto that component, Jeff, is having a comfort level with knowing when you've gotten to the end of your rope, right? In other words, many matters that we see, Jeff, that they start off, they're small. The attorney's like, oh, this is going to be very manageable. We just got, a couple of 500 documents here. Yeah, this is it. This is going to be done. But we know inevitably that case is going to skyrocket. It could easily get within 5,000 email messages if you get, 2 or 3 individuals, for example. And then all of a sudden it's spiraling out of control. And in those cases, many companies like Lexby will offer professional services. That, in other words, okay, you've got to the point where you can't handle this, you need some help on that, and this is absolutely a great time to then pass it off maybe to somebody that can handle some of these things for you. Whether it's creating a production set, doing the preservation side, helping you create a privilege log, whatever the case may be. I know places like Lexby have those capabilities built in. So I got 3 more slides quickly, Jeff, and then I'll be done. But I wanted to just highlight 3 more advantages of using cloud-based document review tools. Lexby happens to be one of them. There's others out there, but here are 3 big advantages. And first is speed, from several different angles. Number 1, I alluded to this in one of my bullet points already, is that you can get up and going right now, right? You could get off this webinar, go to lexby.com, sign up for an account and start using it. You can get in that quick. It's almost as simple as signing up for a free Gmail account, right? You can jump in and start going. Number 2, right after you do that, you can then upload your own data. If a client has sent you a PST file and you've maybe had it sitting, on a thumb drive over on the side of your desk because you not sure what to do with it, the next step then is for you to then plug that thumb drive in, get that PST file uploaded to Lexby. Now, when some firms use service providers and other companies, they have to physically like FedEx that thumb drive somewhere. So that's going to take a day. And then, of course, that company, that service provider has to, put it within their own system when they can get it into their schedule. So that's another day. So you're sitting there waiting when you want to be looking at some of this information. And you can start looking at your documents as soon as you sign up and get going, literally within about 15, 20 minutes on a lot of these platforms. Number 2, cost. Of course, we're going to bring up cost. We've already talked about it many, many times. But 2 points that I want to make with cloud-based systems. Number 1, you only have to pay for the amount of data that you need to review. In many cases, people will just kind of do a data dump on you, for example, right? Or in some cases, you can say, well, we've got 10 people that we need to review their email, but here's 2 of them that we know are the most important. So we're going to start with those. So you can work to keep costs down from that aspect. And in fact, I know with Lexby and other platforms as well, there's no minimum, right? So if you only need to put up maybe 1 PST and review that, then you can do that. You're usually on a month-to-month, or at least I know, Jeff, one of your plans is a month-to-month, so that, if you only need to put it up for maybe a couple of months and you need to review it, that is a much better use of your time and your money, or your client's money, in doing it that way, using a tool that is designed for document review, than it would be to start using something like Microsoft Outlook. You can get up and going on something like Lexby as soon as possible. You can manage your costs much better. And in fact, you can manage how long you're going to use it. If you only need it for 2 months, you can just pay for the 2 months and then you're done, as opposed to other software, service providers put you on some kind of a subscription level, or yearly or annual subscription level. And in some cases, you're locked in. And the last slide that I had, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say, that's a great point, Brett. We've got a lot of small firms that use our Flex plan, which is the month-to-month plan. And in terms of reviewing email, they just, drag and drop it onto the Lexby platform. And not only is it reviewing the email, but to the point you made earlier, it also enables you to review all the attachments and find the privileged documents and find the hot documents for your matter and what's relevant.
Absolutely. Just one more slide, Jeff, and then I'll be done. Accessibility is the other word that a lot of times I will bring up to folks that I know it's worthwhile for them to think about a cloud-based document review platform. And I got maybe 2 or 3 points here. Number 1, I already mentioned this, no need to download and install any software, right? In order to use a cloud-based platform like Lexby or others, all you need is a web browser. Everybody already has a web browser. All the software is right there. All the software runs inside a web browser. So you don't need to have any time. It's accessible from any computer that has a web browser built in. Secondly, you can access this platform from anywhere. Jeff, you mentioned earlier about mobile devices, and I find more and more lawyers today are telling me that they like using like an iPad, for example, right? A little bit of a bigger screen than maybe a phone, but they can use an iPad to log into a platform like Lexby. In some cases, it may look a little bit different. It's not the same functionality on an iPad as it might be on a full computer. but you can still get into it. And if you just need to go through, you're sitting at the DMV or something, and you need to go through the next set of your documents, you can just tap in there and say, determine whether or not you want them to be relevant or not relevant. But for example, I'll just quickly say I use Macs most of the time on my own consulting practice, and I can access Lexby just fine, as much as I can on my Windows 10 computer. And then you're just simply not locked down, right? In the sense that you can use any platform, anywhere, at any time. You can go to the coffee shop. I just love the fact that you don't have to be chained to a desk in order to complete your document review, because sometimes that can just be very frustrating. So that's all that I had. I just going to quickly say thanks again, Jeff and Lexby, for letting me jump in. Wanted to just leave everybody with the eDiscovery Buyer's Guide. I've been a big fan of Lexby for many, many, many years. In fact, I've known Gene Albert and Karsten when they were just starting out with Lexby as one of the first cloud-based document review platforms. And I'm just thrilled to see that they're still going strong in this aspect. So thanks, Jeff.
You bet. Thanks, Brett. That was a fantastic presentation. And you really touched on a lot of the key issues. On this slide, you already touched on speed and accessibility and being able to leverage something that's on demand. And really on demand means that it's really efficient from a cost standpoint. So you don't have to pay for that infrastructure like big law and have it on your prem and have to manage that and deal with that, as Brett mentioned. But the other point that I wanted to make here is that it's highly, highly secure. So I know at one point, the cloud, people were concerned about security in the cloud. But as you can see, the badges at the bottom of this slide, Lexby and our hosting provider, AWS, we've got numerous security certifications. We've passed application penetration tests that are very rigorous. And so Lexby is incredibly secure. And we actually, while we're purpose-built for the boutique firm, we actually have some federal agencies and some local municipalities that utilize us. And as a result, we have to be, by law, we have to be highly secure and have passed these certifications. Brett spoke briefly about our Uber index. I'll touch on this very briefly. So we extract native characters. We do OCR. We also OCR all images of the documents when they come in. And then we also have a translation engine in our partnership with Amazon Web Services that is really powerful in terms of the level of fluency and contextual accuracy of the translation. So we're able to translate those documents, and you can search in either language when you have those translated documents in the platform. And the reason we extract the native characters, to Brett's point earlier, it's not just the value in that Excel spreadsheet, but it's also the formula. It's also if there are hidden cells or hidden sheets in that Excel file that you need to access. And then from an OCR standpoint, sometimes you'll find really relevant information. Maybe there's a receipt that's attached to an email. Maybe that's in the form of an image that was scanned in. So OCRing those documents are really important. So there are a bunch of different use cases that make it important to be able to access the native characters as well as the OCR characters and being able to search those within the ESI set that you're working. Next, Lexby is feature rich and very simple to use. So, you see these images on the screen. We equip you with very powerful technology that's very simple to use. One thing is called near dupe groupings or near duplication groupings. So we very quickly help you identify documents that are similar and have similar content. And so they're like documents, and we help you group them together. This is really, really valuable in terms of identifying privileged docs and making sure that they don't slip through the cracks. So by grouping them together, you can code them very efficiently, all in one fell swoop. That makes it really simple. Email threading and analysis. So as Brett had touched on before, the importance of email in your review. and the importance of the metadata. Well, with our email threading, not only do we show you, get very granular and allow you to compare the emails and show you the differences and calling those out in a highlighted fashion, we also help you find emails that are missing. So depending upon the email thread, there may be missing emails within that thread, and we can help you identify those and say, hey, wait, and you can go back to the opposition, there are missing emails here, and you can address that. And then technology assisted review is what's called predictive coding. And we've got an algorithm, a machine learning algorithm that will go through and it'll look how you're reviewing your documents. So if you have millions of documents or hundreds of thousands of documents and it's a very document intensive case, then this algorithm will go through and analyze how you're reviewing and coding your documents. And then it'll go through automatically and code the rest of the document set, either responsive or non-responsive, and allow you to get through your review very, very quickly. And then with our partnership with Amazon, we have neural machine translation. We also have audio and video file transcription. And those two services are additional services that we provide. And they're very efficient, very fast. So again, you can handle, if you've got potentially a cross-border or multilingual ESI set, we can help you maintain control over that, and you can handle those documents in-house by having them go through our machine translation process. And then possibly you might want to have the hot docs or the docs that you want to use in your depots or, for evidence. You might want to have those go through a certified translator, but at the very least, this gives you the ability to maintain control over the eDiscovery process in your review. Brett, are you seeing more and more cross-border litigation? And, as a result of globalization, are you seeing small firms handling more cross-border litigation?
Yeah, a little bit more, Jeff. It's certainly, it's something that has historically been with the much larger firms and much larger companies and corporations, right? But I am definitely seeing it. Even some of the smaller companies, especially if it's a small firm that's handling maybe like a technology company, right? That may have maybe a shop in San Francisco, but they also have one maybe in Hong Kong or in Germany or something like that. Obviously, there's quite a bit that you have to deal with, not just in the neural aspects or the different language components on there, but also even sort of maybe from a privacy protection component, right? The EU deals with documents and privacy quite a bit different than we do here in the United States, and so you have to watch some of those things. And frankly, I find many small law firms either just haven't encountered that before, so that's something pretty brand new for them that they have to deal with. But again, it's getting easier. I mean, all these tools in these terms sometimes sound a little too techy, too geeky, right? And in fact, I would even put maybe the technology assisted review and the neural machine, that's on one end of the spectrum. That's really the geeky stuff. But this email threading and the near dupe today, if you are not taking advantage of this technology and being able to utilize this and to see it, then this is the simplest kind of components on there. And it's all about the machines being able to do it for you. In other words, they're not making the final decision on whether something is relevant, but using email threads and near dupe groupings, that is going a long way to help you make that decision much quicker and have more confidence in making that decision.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I've got to tell you, I absolutely love the near duplication technology and capability. Sometimes email and email threads go way off on different tangents. So maybe it starts off on the business related item, and then maybe it all of a sudden takes a turn, and people are talking about what they're going to do for the weekend.
Right.
Near duplication gives you the ability to track the communication and the correspondence of a particular topic across communication modalities. So maybe there was a Slack conversation that was taking place, and there were emails, and they were all tied together on the same topic and that are relevant to your matter, you're able to, group those documents together. And so you can track those communications across those different modalities and be able to view them and manage them and tag them and code them. I absolutely love near dupe grouping technology.
I try to find ways, Jeff, that people can wrap their heads around, like, what is this technology? Because near dupe, I mean, you and I use some of these terms all the time, and this isn't the best analogy, but it's one that I think people can get their heads around. When you shop on Amazon, let's say, like, I had to buy a tent the other day, right? So I went and looked at the tents, and I think I found one that I liked, but I'm always going to go check that one line at Amazon, kind of about in the middle of the page that says, if you like this product, or other people that bought this product also bought these similar products, right? Does that make sense? Again, I know it's not a full analogy there, but in a way you can think about it that if you find a document in something like Lexby that is right on point, like an email message, just like you were saying, then you let the computer help you find some of the other on point or the more relevant type documents. If you like this document, you should really look at this document as well. And to me, I think that's the way I think about near dupe sometimes. And in other words, it's the machine helping you to make those better decisions much quicker and with a lot more confidence.
Yeah, that's a great example. I love your analogy. And then with email threading, as you can see here on the left down at the bottom, Lexby also gives you a way to visualize this. So you get to see the email, and you can click on multiples, and in the right-hand column, it'll pop up and show you, the metadata, the custodian, the to, the from, the date. And so you can quickly start to visualize, when this, what happened and how things transpired in this email thread.
Yeah, I would just say that is a fantastic option there from the email threading. Again, I still have a lot of lawyers that say, I like looking at the email from my client in my own Outlook because I can see when the same conversations are grouped together. But again, it's those same problems. You're mixing electronic evidence with your own work product. It's just a mess that can happen there. And I love the fact that you guys have a visual component on there as well to help them understand that conversation. Because frankly, that's how we use email today, right?
Right.
Email, we call it email because we know the snail mail, right? The U.S. Postal Service, where you would write a letter, you would send it, you'd wait for the recipient to write another letter and send it back to you. And that was writing letters. Today, email, we use email as conversations. we have conversations in email. And so having this conversation thread or the email thread is absolutely imperative. It's critical to better understanding not just the information that is contained in there, but also to better understand what were people talking about, which is really what we're always seeking out. You need to understand the bigger context of the conversation. The only way you're going to be able to do that is to have the original electronic files, the PSD file, and use a platform like Lexby that can show this component for you easily.
Yeah, those are great points, Brett. I'm going to pivot a little bit off of email. And the reason I'm going to do that now, I'm just going to touch on a few points here. Email's critical, and it's at a critical mass too in terms of utilization. However, when you look at demographics and understanding the quality and the type of custodians that you're dealing with, millennials actually prefer instant messaging to email. They think it's more secure, it's instant, and they actually prefer it more. So, understanding the custodians and kind of what their profile is and what they're utilizing is really important too. And there are billions of app downloads in the app stores, both Apple and Android. And many of these applications have instant messaging capabilities and have messaging integrated into their solution. And then you also have location-based services that are integrated into that as well. So, these apps are tracking people's locations. There's messaging that is going across these sets of apps. And all of that can be really important in ESI as well. I know we talked a little bit about that early on in this presentation, but it's definitely expanding and growing. So in order to be able to review those types of documents, you really need to have a platform like Lexby or another cloud eDiscovery platform to be able to access those, process those, and get them to a point where you can code them and review them. All right, next, with Lexby, we've got a team of eDiscovery professionals that are standing by to assist our clients on a moment's notice. And so really, you don't have to have a massive staff of litigation support professionals. You don't have to have a large IT staff to be able to handle eDiscovery. You can do this in-house, no problem. We also train your paralegals at no charge. So we've got an eDiscovery for the Paralegal Advantage certification program that's free training for your paralegals. We'll get them up to speed so you can handle more document-intensive cases in-house. All of our professional services team is ACED certified, and then we've got 24/7 ticketing system that allows you to submit an IT issue to our support department, and we take care of those very quickly. All right, and that leads me to my next polling question, and that is, would you like a demo of the Lexby Discovery platform? And while you're answering that, I'll let you know we'll be making the following available for webinar attendees. You can get a recorded streaming version of today's session, an MP3 podcast, or a PDF. Please let us know if you have any questions or comments about this webinar or suggestions for future topics. This webinar is part of our Lexby eDiscovery webinar series. And if you want notices of future live and on-demand webinars as part of the series, please email us at webinars@lexby.com or follow us on LinkedIn. And Brett, thank you so much for participating today. I thought it was incredibly informative, and I love your perspective. And as always, I look forward to seeing your next report and the buyer's guide coming out.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. It was great to be here.
All right, thanks. And everybody, thank you for attending, and watch your inbox for an invite to our next webinar on best practices in eDiscovery. Take care.